to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I can drag it into the bathroom and drown in the bathtub.
You bet I cut the taxes at the top.
How dare you? How dare you? Go ahead, make my day.
The Rick Smith Show starts now.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Jacket Gate. Yes, it's real. I got to be honest. The first thing I thought if I saw the jacket, I go, oh, someone photoshopped that. No, nobody would do such a bad job of writing that message on the back of a jacket. I just, at first I did not believe it. I had to look it up, multiple sources, all of that stuff. And yeah. I don't care. Do you? Now, I read that, as she is going, and we're talking about the First Lady of the United States, going to the southern border wearing a jacket saying, I don't care. For a photo op and for a PR stunt. And I'm not buying. And to answer your question, Melania, yes, I actually do care. Evidently a lot more than you. Now, the Donald tweeted out that, no, this wasn't about the kids. This wasn't about immigration. This was about the fake news media. She doesn't care about them. And I'm going, I don't buy it. Sorry, not buying it. I think it was a major distraction. It was meant to dominate the news cycle. And this was, I think, the Donald playing dress up. This was him, basically using his wife as a prop to change the message. But again, much like this entire scheme, the message has gotten, away from him because most people, oddly enough, do care. And they care quite a lot, which is why you've seen hundreds of thousands of people saying on the 30th, they're taken to the streets. Why you've seen it's almost up to $20 million now being donated to this organization to help fight for these kids in these immigration, these gulags. People do care. And what we now find out, which is what we knew all along. I mean, there's nothing new here. It's amazing to me how at least I say, this is what it is. It's blatant. It's in your face. You don't need a crystal ball or to be clairvoyant to figure out this con man. He created this crisis solely because he thought it was going to create a stir. And as we now find out, Jonathan Lemar, he is a White House correspondent for the Associated Press. He was on MSNBC's Morning Joe. And he said basically what we know. Basically that, Trump thought this would be another culture war kind of thing. It would be like, those SOB NFL players who had the audacity to kneel during the national anthem. Thought you would get the culture warriors all tingly in the panties. Because look, they were literally ripping babies from the bosoms of their mothers and ripping children from their father's arms. And you're hearing the tears and the wailing and the anger of the families, and he really thought that they'd be able to pin this on Obama. And if you go back and you read a lot of the, now, in the aftermath, you go back and you read the propagandists on the right wing's writing. And an uncle of mine, just sent me a bunch of stuff, going, Obama did this. And I'm going, no, you can't write that story years after something happened as if it happened years ago. And he goes, see, look, Obama did this. I'm going, no, that was written 2 days ago. You can't go back and rewrite history. Winston Smith did not exist. This is not 1984. You don't get to rewrite history. But the calculus here in the Trump mind was that they would have these images of babies being ripped away from their parents, and the culture warriors, the family value people, would rise up, and it would be against the Democrats, because if you looked at the message was, Obama did this. This is Obama making us do this. And it's amazing to me how much power Obama still has. Surfing around on his jet skis and, having meetings, and I forget what the address is there in DC, but somehow he's got more power now than he ever had. He should have never been president because he's got so much power now. He's taken people down. And they really thought, in Trump's mind, in between those orange years, really thought that the culture warriors would pin the blame on Obama, without actually understanding that, facts facts still matter, and people still kind of have the ability to read. Now, we're working on that. We're doing, with his plan to put the Department of Labor and Department of Education together to shrink it down to where it does nothing. Maybe we'll get to the point to where we can't read or comprehend or any of that. But still, we can read that April 6th memo from the little leprechaun. And again, if there are any leprechauns listening, I'm not talking bad about you. But we can read that and say, look, the zero tolerance policy that this administration was now undertaking was purely their choice. They made this decision. And it was interesting watching through the days, leading up to the other day, where Trump was saying, I don't have a choice. I can't do anything about it. I can't make an executive order. I can't make a phone call. It's the Democrats' fault. And then, lo and behold, he signs an executive order that he wants us to believe completely undid what he chose to do, that the Democrats made him do. And yet now we find out that, well, this was all the scheme all along. And then you couple that with, do you remember back in May when the little leprechaun sessions, did the whole, if you're smuggling a child, we'll prosecute you thing? Do you remember that? And he said, and that child will be separated from you as required by law. If you don't like that, then don't smuggle children over the border. Remember that? And then he did the whole, the whole Bible thing, where, it's, God, this is God's will. Evidently, on this day, he sat down with the Christian Broadcasting Network's David Brody. And this is one of those things where you go, I remember May. I haven't been that deluded. I haven't hit my head that many times that I can't remember just May or just a couple of days ago when you were inciting, referencing the Bible and how God wants us to follow government laws. Said today to this Christian Broadcasting Network, the media, that they never really intended to do this. Never really intended for it to happen. It was not something we were supposed to do. And you go, hold on, wait a second. You wrote the memo in April saying we're going to do this. You said in May that we're going to do this. In June, you said the Bible tells us we can do this. And now, well, we never really meant to do it. And I got to tell you, I love Brody's question to him. He asked the question of, he says, quote, the media narrative out there has been the administration caving to pressure, that these optics have not been good for the administration. Now, when I read that question, I had to read it a couple of times. The media narrative out there has been the administration caving to pressure. Not that the administration listened to the will of the people and did the will of the people and, this experiment of self-governance. No, they caved. And the optics were just bad that they caved. Not that the optics were bad that you had wailing children in cages. Again, Christian Broadcasting Network. It's just that the optics of the Trump administration caving, it doesn't look good. And Jeffy answered the question as, how I originally read it, which was, the optics are bad of children being taken away. And I'm going, when I went back and I reread it, I'm going, no, that's not what the question is at all. The point this guy's making is, the optics of them caving looks bad. And I'm going, yeah, it's bad that you're snatching kids from parents. It's terrible. So today, what we got is a bunch. Today was a hammer day. You started off with Melania and the coat, the I don't care, do you coat? I wonder if that's going to be for sale. I wonder if Ivanka will sell that, have some Chinese children write that on the back of a coat. Maybe make a couple $100 off those MAGA idiots. It's kind of a thought. But today also you had, a vote on the immigration bill that went down. The farm bill, they on a very Republican partisan line, not one Democrat, good for them, voted for this monstrosity of and this devastating farm bill, 213 to 211, and good on the Democrats. And I think it was 8 Republicans who voted against this nonsense, which is going to harm millions of people. We're literally kicking, millions of people off of the rolls of people getting food stamps. But you know what? We're going to make sure that, the crop insurance is there. We're going to make sure that the farmers, the corporate farmers are going to be just fine. Thank you very much. And also, we're going to reorganize basically all of government. They want to do away with the Department of Education and the Department of Labor, combine them into the Department of Education and Workforce. So we're doing away with labor altogether. You're just the workforce. And of course, they're going to shrink the budget down to nothing to where, any of those onerous, people killing regulations, they'll be gone. I'm sorry, wrong. The job killing regulations. Screw those people. We can always hire some more. And if we need them, we can always import them from other places. Much like the Trump organization does with their H-1B visas. Just kind of throwing that out there as an aside. So, all of this, all kind of piled up on top of each other to change the narrative of, we just went through a couple of weeks of people actually paying attention, being active, engaged, and involved in their government to make this administration stop a horribly cruel policy, which they're not actually going to stop, by the way. I've been seeing conflicting reports all over the place of, yes, the Border Patrol agents are going to stop incarcerating people. They're going to go back to the way they used to do it. And yes, they're full detention of, families. And this is masterful, because you can't get a straight answer out of this administration to save your life. And the mixed messages and all of the chaos and all of the, I can't say the word. All of the steaming pile of what that they're throwing at us, hoping that we'll be distracted. Trust me, they're going to continue this policy. One way or another, they are going to continue to break up families. They're going to continue to hold people hostage, and they're going to continue this draconian policy without actually getting anything done. Because look, the Republicans, they can't get out of their own way, even though they control all of the levers of power. And they don't want to solve this issue. They need this issue to rally the base. Because understand, and we've been talking about this for a while, this is their 2018 re-election strategy. Because the tax cuts, they can't run on that, because that didn't trickle down. You didn't get your $4,000 Trump prize. That didn't materialize, so we can't run on that. I can't think of another accomplishment. They didn't actually repeal the Affordable Care Act. They just cut it 1,000 times, hoping that it would die on its own. And still, it's there, fortunately for millions of people. And there are millions more now uninsured, so can't really run on that. They didn't They didn't do really anything on infrastructure. We've gone another year and a half. It's going to be 2, 3 by the time they do anything, if they ever do anything. So our roads and our bridges are still crumbling. We're still falling behind the rest of the world in investments. And oh, by the way, who knows what we're doing with North Korea? Who knows what we're doing with our trade policies? And we've ticked off all of our friends. So, winning. Are you tired of the winning yet? Because if this is winning, I'm sorry, I'm not happy with it. Not happy whatsoever. Anyway, love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Own 90% of the wealth, 10% of the people. Own 90% of the wealth. Where do you fit in? Take a look at yourself. 10% of the people. Own 90% of the wealth.
Where smart policy and sound investment matters. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1943. That was the day United Mine Workers President John L. Lewis issued strike orders at the nation's mines, calling out more than 500,000 miners. The third general coal strike in 3 months defied the wartime no-strike pledge. Miners raised several demands, including wage increases, an end to the dangerous third shift, and portal-to-portal pay. High wartime inflation only worsened miners' already low wages. Early that spring, Lewis denounced the mine owners, the War Labor Board, and the Little Steel formula used to calculate wartime wages. He warned the formula meant starvation for workers and the end of collective bargaining. By April, President Roosevelt had ordered wage freezes. Miners began walking out of the pits even before the strike call, as soon as the War Labor Board handed down their decision on June 19th. The board had rejected all of the miners' demands. The United Mine Workers responded stating, quote, "No member and no officer of the United Mine Workers of America would be so destitute of principle and so devoid of honor as to sign or execute such an infamous yellow dog contract." Though the United Mine Workers were forced to call off the strike the next day, some miners continued to stay out in protest. 4 days later, Congress passed the dreaded Smith-Conley Act, dubbed the Slave Labor Bill, in response to the strike. Throughout the summer, miners across the country would rage against the government for threatening them with conscription and jail time if they dared refuse the terms of the decision. By November, the miners would walk out a 4th time and finally win many of their demands, at least from the War Labor Board. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @laborhistoryin2.
Lessons of the past we all learn with workers' blood. The mistakes of the bosses we must pay for. From the cities to the farmlands in trenches full of mud. 'Cause war has always been the boss's way, sir. Come on! The union forever defending rights. Let's fight right wing our workers unite. With our brothers and our sisters from many far-off lands.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So a Grit Post headline said Kentucky has the 9th worst economy after 3 years of Governor Matt Bevin's cruel policies. Business Insider said Kentucky's economy 47th in the United States. And you look, all this conservative ideological economics is taking states in one direction, and that is down. Slashing public aid programs, slashing the social safety net, gutting workers' rights, stealing their pensions, taxing them to give, more to the very wealthy and big corporations has not worked. And we've been doing this now for 40 years. We've been paying homage to the chair and, getting kicked in the teeth for it. But here's the thing. You're seeing people who are rising up and saying, you know what? No more. And I've been saying for a very long time, this is the reason that the right wing has to kill union members. has to destroy the labor movement in this country, because they're the people who are going to stand up and say, we're not taking this steaming pile of you-know-what anymore. And here to talk a little bit about what's going on in his state of Kentucky, I've asked John Stovall to come talk with us. He's president of Teamsters Local 783. John, thanks for taking time for us.
Glad to be here, sir. Glad to be here.
So ninth worst economy according to one article, fourth worst according to the next.
Yeah, so much for all his promise of doing away with right to work, prevailing wage, and all the businesses we're going to run to Kentucky, and that's been real good.
Yeah, we hear that a lot, don't we? I mean, the whole, if only we could, pass nonsense like right to work, we could steal jobs from other states. And if only we kept wages low enough, at poverty levels, all these employers would flock to the area and give us, poverty wage jobs. Not even that happens.
No, it's like you said, it's just a tool. Like you said earlier in your show, it's a tool to destroy unions. And they market it in different ways between the Koch brothers and the different stuff they send out in the Guardians. They send out and they send this message out, and people hear it and they think, well, that doesn't sound really bad, but they don't really know what it means. And so they've done that. They've marketed it, and if all these take away all these regulations, we're going to do this, we're going to attract all these jobs, and all it does is pimp states out against the company knows where they're going to begin with, but they're going to see how much of a tax break and how much they get cheap labor for and stuff like that. So they've done made their mind up. So. Yep. The states run around and pimp themselves out.
Yeah, and to highlight that, have you been following the HQ2, the Amazon HQ2 thing? How much money states are just throwing at this company in the hopes that maybe they can land the grand deal, the grand bargain, even though I think Amazon knows where they're going well before any of this stuff goes on.
Oh, yeah, I've kept up a little bit of it because we got like four or five facilities here in Kentucky, and we actually, the governor made a bid for that, and I didn't think we'd have a shot at it anyways. But what you'd have to give up to get them, you'll never get back in revenue, or we won't in our lifetime. So You'll sell the state just to get them here. And they're not great paying jobs, and they do. None of them are union jobs, but none of them are offered the benefits that a good union contract would offer.
It's amazing to me. But here's the thing, and this is where I have some hope. And look, we could probably sit here all day and do things are horrible, and these governors like Bevin and like Brownback Mountain there in Kansas when he destroyed their state. You can go down the list of all of the horrible policies that these folks have brought forth. I'm kind of hopeful by what I saw in Kentucky, what we're seeing and what we saw in Oklahoma, what we saw in West Virginia, the kind of energy we're now seeing, and actually some victories. And you guys recently have had a victory on the pension issue. Short term, maybe short-lived, but you celebrate the victories where you can. Tell me about what happened with the pension issue.
Yeah, he tried to launch that through at the beginning, and I guess you would say he tried to do it the legal way. Well, he knew he got so much backlash from the teachers and the public sector employees and state workers that they ended up hiding it in a sewage bill, and they didn't pass it out until the day of the hearing of the bill itself. So most of the legislators had less than an hour to read it. Well, it passed. So our Attorney General Andy Beshear filed a lawsuit, and we had all the unions and teachers and public sector unions. We marched en masse at Frankfurt, and a lot of politicians got scared, and so after we did all that. Attorney General Beshear took it to court, and it's a judge that Bevins doesn't like. So he's numerous times have called him out in the paper, said he was incompetent, he was stupid, he was a hack, he's a liberal, bleeding liberal, childish stuff that you would think a sitting governor would be above saying stuff like that.
Yeah, you would think a president would be above that too, John, but we at least see where he's getting at.
Yeah, exactly. We got a little one, the country's got the big one. But, anyways, they heard it in court, and less than a day he ruled it unconstitutional because they were supposed to give 3 readings to each chamber, and it should have been over 100 members vote, and they only had like 40, I believe what it was. It should have went to both houses and been read, but he didn't do it. They did it all in one day in a sewage bill, and the judge overthrew it, threw it out. Now, Bevin said he's going to fight it, but the Republicans who took so much heat said they're not going back to it.
No, and that's what having the kind of pressure that you guys put on, why that's so important to have that kind of an engaged, active, informed electorate out in the street and paying attention to them. Because, look, politicians don't want the voters paying attention. They want people going about their lives, going to the picnics and the baseball games and forgetting about anything that happens in those halls behind the doors with the smoke-filled rooms.
Oh, absolutely. And it's gotten so bad now that because we have marched, and the thing you said earlier, you kind of hope it had awoken some people. At least I think it has here in Kentucky, and obviously it did in Oklahoma and West Virginia and some of the other ones. But what it's done here has brought all the unions together: teachers union, the Teamsters, the AFL-CIO, the brothers of that. That's brought the UAW. I mean, SEIU, ASME. It's brought all our unions together. And since all this has started, we have regular meetings now amongst each other. And we've made it a pact, like our Central Labor Council. We got close to 60,000 union members in Louisville. We meet once a month now and over this very stuff. So it's really brought us together.
Well, I would hope so, because look, these attacks have been ongoing for a very long time, and the hope is that because look, I'm expecting Monday to be Armageddon Day, and I'm hoping that that labor has a response to the Janus decision that is going to come down on Monday, and I'm hoping it's taking to the streets and shutting stuff down for a while.
That's what I think we need to do, and like I said, we've had been our own worst enemy sometimes. We react more than we are proactive. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've got to do now is we've got to get our message out there. Well, there's different ways we can do it. We go to the streets, we go to the media. I've always said, and a lot of people, for whatever reason, I guess feel it's not that important, but you got the NFL, like basketball's big here in Kentucky. Everybody knows that. But why not get the NBA Players Union and a couple of guys that played at Kentucky or Louisville to say, hey, I make a lot of money, but my career is only 5 years, and if I didn't have a union and the protection of the union, I wouldn't be able to protect my family when my body's broken down. I think we got to think outside the box. And
absolutely with you.
I think, and it's kind of woken some people up. And there's different ways we can go about it. Instead, we just sit back and we react too much, and that's the only criticism I would have with all of us.
No, I mean even the Hollywood people. I mean, I forget who it was, but she was doing one of the talk shows, and she was talking about mental illness and talking about her struggles and
Ashley Judd.
Yeah, okay. And she said, look, it was because my union gives me great health insurance, and I have access to the best medical care that you can get because my union negotiates this, and that everybody should have that. And duh, exactly.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I said. I can't quite understand why some of we haven't band together to get that message out there. Because we're with the liberal media, but we don't seem to get a good message out sometimes, I guess is what I'm saying. But it has woken a lot of people up and made them kind of look at, hey, man, they can really do that to us, or they can really take that away from us. A lot of times people feel they believe it's to everybody else, not them.
Yep. And
they're starting to see now it applies to everybody.
So there's a liberal media out there? I must have missed it.
Yeah, you and me both, because I got to hear it all the time, too. This liberal media. And I'm like, you control every airway there is. I mean, you got Fox, you got all this stuff. So you got Rush, you got, but yeah, somehow or another, like I said, we became counterpunchers instead of going straight at them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But, I love how well they play the victim card. They control all the levers of power. They control the media. They control the moneyed interests, control all of the major corporation, all of the, the best property, all of the, you name it, the moneyed interests control it, yet they're the underdogs. And that, they're the David in this Goliath scene. It's remarkable to me.
It is. It's kind of like, President Trump yesterday was on there. It's all the Democrats' fault that we don't have border control. It's the Democrats' fault that I had to put these kids in here. It's the Democrats. I'm like, good God, you control every branch of government there is. Because of your incompetency, you can't get anything done. But, they control everything. But like you said, they're great at playing the victim.
Yeah, see, I'm not buying the incompetent angle. I'm buying they did this with malice and forethought. They thought this out. The intent was to do exactly what happened. They just hoped that we were dumb enough to fall on the but Obama. And we didn't.
Yeah, you're probably right on that. I just find it so hard to believe that he got elected. That friends, family actually voted for this guy. It's what blows me away. But I don't know.
So in your area, the people that you're talking to, your members, because union members are always given the I don't want to say credit, but always saddled with the responsibility for electing this guy. And look, there were a lot of union members who did vote for him. Are you hearing people going, this isn't quite what I was expecting? Or are they saying this is exactly what I want out of him? This is the guy I voted for?
Right now, the icing was the detaining the children. That's got a lot of them talking now. Hey man, that ain't right. You can't do that. and they're starting to see through some of it. I just think, and then some of them will miss that, say, damn it, man, I just voted for him because I wanted it to change. I was sick of the status quo. I hated Hillary, but just something different. And now they've got it, and they, especially with of all the trade wars he's starting now and the different things going on in Kentucky's our big cash crops, bourbon and some of this stuff, and China's already talking about that. And so they're starting to see some of this stuff, come around, and it's got them thinking. And we had Richard Ojeda from West Virginia. He came to the union hall. He's running for U.S. Congress, and he's a military guy. He's everything that they couldn't say anything bad about.
Right, and he's actually leading in his race right now.
Yes, and some of my Republican members, and they don't want to admit it, but I know they are. Well, they met him, and he comes in there, camouflage pants on. He doesn't dress up. He speaks from the heart, and they were saying, "Man, that's what we need. We need more Democrats like that." That's where they're out there, but we just got to get to them. I said, you all get blinded by all that hate and stuff that they spread out there, and you believe all that instead of looking around. So, yeah, I think a lot of them are starting to catch on to it that, but I really think most of them they bought into that. They just wanted to change a status quo, and they didn't really bother to look at his character and his history and everything else. They just, he got up there, said what he wanted, and I think that impressed a lot of people.
Yeah, well, let's hope come November there's a sea change in this country. We begin to head somewhere back to where where I believe who we are exists. Because right now, what I'm seeing now, I hope this isn't who we are as a country.
Oh, you and me both. It's embarrassing. It's sad, and you're sitting there thinking, how can you believe in this stuff? And we can all. We're not all alike, so we're all going to have different versions of stuff. But that doesn't mean we can't work together for the betterment of everyone. It's not just about winning. We win, you lose. It's about what's doing right for every citizen of the United States. And that's what we're supposed to be about. And that's what we were about. And that's what made us so great so many years ago. But we kind of went to the fanatical on certain things. And it just, that's what's hurt the nation. It's what's holding us back.
Yeah. But,
in my opinion.
No, you're absolutely right. And I would argue that, the only way we fix our problems is to do what you guys did in Kentucky, and that's take to the streets, begin the organizing, begin talking to neighbors, talking to your friends, family, and having these conversations to where maybe we can come back to a point where, there are some common truths. There are some things that, no matter what side of the divide you're on, there are some things that we agree on. We used to agree on Social Security. We used to agree on workers' right to join and form unions. We used to believe that if you worked hard and you played by the rules, that you had the opportunity to get ahead. You had the right to an education, health care. We used to believe this stuff, and now we've just been ripped to shreds on virtually every one of those issues.
Oh, we have, and they've made it like anybody that gets Social Security or Medicaid or some kind of government assistance, that they're no good, they're horrible. And, the older I get, the one thing I've learned, man, I got enough that I'm going to be judged on one day. I'm not going to judge anybody else. And I think our goal in life is to help each other and, help each other up. You don't have to give out handouts, but help each other up. And that's what the union was. And a lot of times when I do talk to people and they want to know, and I said, well, the best way you can look at a union right now, I said, 11%, maybe less than that's left in the United States unionized. I said, that used to be what kept the middle class up and kept the economy going. I said, but the Republicans spend 90% of their time trying to destroy the unions. And I go, why do you think that is? And they'll look at me, well, what do you mean? I said, if they do away with the unions, then it would be the haves and the have-nots. There'll be no more middle class. And they'll pay you and do to you what they want to do to you in the workplace, and you'll have no recourse to go anywhere else. And they kind of look at it and they think, man, I never thought about it like that. I said, well, think about it. It's less than 11% of the workforce is union. Why do they spend so much time and write so many laws to go after unions and make it hard for unions to represent people? I said, do you really think they give a shit about you over there if you didn't have a union? And some of them starting to get it. I think they're starting to see it. But like I said, that's the part where all the unions need to get the message out in a strong force and do it together.
No, I'm right there with you. And I've been saying that exact thing for about 13 years now.
14 years, yeah.
Every day on this program, we hit some theme of that because you're absolutely right. And in the private sector right now, union density is about 6.4%. We're almost to the point to where it was when it was illegal to be a union member in this country. And once Janus gets pushed through on Monday, and I have very little faith that it doesn't go any way but the wrong way, that number, 11.3, I think it was, will fall pretty fast into the single digits. because the public sector is where the union density is right now, and the right wing knows that. This is not about their First Amendment rights. This isn't about anything other than pure politics and pure punishing your opponent. That's all this is about. It's not about some idiot who believes one thing or another. This is purely about political power.
That's it. And like I said, they want the haves and the have-nots, and they're not going to stop until we either wake up and everybody starts fighting back. But they're going to keep coming at us. And I think, I'm feeling a little bit encouraged here lately that people are starting to see it. And, we'll have news channels come out to Union Hall to interview or something like that. I've had some that say, man, I wish we had a union. We'll start talking. And you'll see some of them, they're starting to get some of that stuff. But you'll still got your ones that they've tied them into the guns and all that kind of stuff. They're never going to take our guns. And you need to support all them people. And, so. But like I said, we've got some good young people coming up, and it's going to be up to the young people. And that's the only reason I feel halfway confident, because they're getting more involved, and they're starting, even though it's a horrible things that happen in Florida and that, but the kids got powers, and they need to, I guess we were kind of at fault for not teaching them the labor movement. We all kind of went away from it. We went away from the labor movement. We went away from skilled trades jobs that everybody had to go to college, and that was part of our fault too. But I think they're starting to see it, so I'm encouraged.
That is the hope. The more we talk to them, the more we get out and preach the message, the better I think it's going to be. John, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the thoughts, and also congratulations on the victory, even if it is maybe even short period. But the hope is that by staying active, engaged, people in the streets, we continue to move in the right direction. Thanks so much, John.
You too. Keep up the fight, Rick.
Good stuff. John Stovall. He's the president of Teamsters Local 783 there in Kentucky. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
This is why we fight, why we lie awake. This is why we fight.
Finally, radio for the rest of us. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. That was the day that 10 Irish miners were hung in Pennsylvania. They were part of a group of 20 who had been sentenced to death for allegedly being part of the Molly Maguires, a group of alleged radical Irish miners. Miners were on strike in the Schuylkill County anthracite coal region. The Mollies were accused of perpetrating violence and murder against the mine owners. Newspapers helped to rile up anger against the striking Irish miners. A Pinkerton detective infiltrated the group, and his testimony doomed those he accused to the gallows. Since the hangings, many have questioned his testimony and the cases made against the miners. But at the time, many newspapers celebrated the hangings. On the day of the executions, the New York Tribune called the men, quote, the wild beasts of the collieries of eastern Pennsylvania. The Carbon Advocate of Lehighton, Pennsylvania, declared the majesty of the law has been vindicated. The community breathes more freely now that these men who feared neither the laws of God or man have met their doom. The day has gone down in labor history as the Day of the Rope, or Black Thursday. The message of the hanging was meant to be sent to all who would dare stand up against the mine owners. In 1979, the governor of Pennsylvania posthumously pardoned John Blackjack Kehoe, one of the alleged leaders of the Molly.
Down the mines, no sunlight shines, those pits, they're black as hell. In modern slime, they do their time at Paddy's prison cell. And they curse the day they try.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
The most important issues of the day. This is the Rick Smith Show.
I wonder if they're going to have that, the Melania Trump jacket for sale. I don't care Actually, I do. I mean, this is one of those things that I do care what this administration does. I do care what happens to this country. I do care what happens to those children and their families. I'm sorry, I can't go the I don't care route. I'm just not doing it. Anyway, let's find out what's going on around the world in Washington, D.C. Bob Ney, Talk Media News. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So have you seen the big jacket dust up?
Well, I just saw it. I was with a friend of mine who's extremely political. He raised the issue to me. I didn't hear about it. And the intent was to, send it as a message to the news media. But what a jacket to wear, that could be connotated that it was about the kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a too nuanced message that nobody, I don't think anybody gets or buys or, thinks is the right message. And, why does she show up now? Why the photo op now? Why the PR stunt now? Where was she a couple of days ago, weeks ago? Why now?
Well, it's because of him reversing his position, and also, I think he got a lot of heat from her privately, as I'm told, on the issue. So I think that's part of it. And the other part was to take the sting away by sending the First Lady there.
Do you really believe that? Do you believe that she and the daughter were giving him any pressure? Because, the reports are coming out now that, he saw this as a winner. He saw this as, the kneeling the kneeling in the NFL. He saw this as, inflaming the culture warriors, to come up and rise up for the family against the Democrats. I don't think he ever thought it was going to come and bite him in the behind.
No, I don't think he did, but I don't think that they were comfortable. I think that Melania Trump and Ivanka Trump, from what I understand, became extremely uncomfortable with it and urged him to stop.
I hope you're right. I hope there's some humanity there, but I'm struggling with that, given all that this administration has done, and this just being another low of a whole bunch of lows. And I hope the world looks at this and looks at the jacket and looks at all this and doesn't clump all of us into that I don't care category.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Let's move on. Some interesting fireworks today in the House of Representatives. Some immigration stuff. What happened on the immigration front?
Well, the conservative bill went down, and then there was to be a vote right after that on the compromise bill, which doesn't have enough votes because Democratic side's not going to be for it, nor are the conservatives. And then it was asked by some conservative members to hold the bill, as I understand it, and hold it till tomorrow. So they're kind of regrouping. What I suspicion, and frankly what I would do if I was there, even if I didn't like the bill and I liked the conservative bill, I would urge passage of the second bill that they have, the compromise bill that they withheld till tomorrow, and urge passage of it. So I think they're trying to get the conservatives to say, look, you're making something worse. At least keep this process moving. That's why they take one more day to try.
Yeah, because here's the thing, and this is where I keep reminding some of my conservative friends and Republican listeners that the Republicans control all the levers of power. This argument that it's all the Democrats' fault is kind of feigned, and it's kind of extremely disingenuous and wrong.
Right.
When you control the whole system, you can't claim that the person who has no power is boogering it up. Just kind of throwing that out there. Also today, the farm bill, a little bit on the farm bill. I guess we're literally going to take food out of the mouths of children. Not going to happen?
Well, I don't think, the farm bill's it was hard to pass in the House. It's got a whole process left in the Senate. I don't know what will happen with it. There were food stamp changes. I don't know if that'll hold in the Senate. It may not. Obviously, the Senate is a whole different body.
Yeah, I mean, $1.5 trillion cuts in Medicaid as well. I mean, you look at this, just the pain and the suffering that the House leadership, thought was well worth putting forward. And again, look, we both know how this game will end out, and you're right. The Senate will dull some of the edges. But at the end of it, this is the priorities of this party right now. The priorities are, we're gonna kick the poor and we're gonna enrich the wealthy, and heaven forbid you're on the wrong side of the message.
Well, they always try to do these farm bills too. When I was there, we were doing farm bills, and I don't even know why food stamps are in the farm bill anyway. They ought to be in Health and Human Services for the overall debate.
Yeah, well, what do you think about the whole idea of getting rid of the Department of Labor and the Department of Education and combining them into one really small and ineffective kind of department?
Well, I've heard this one for years, and obviously I would be labor ought to be kept separate, period. You know, labor needs to have its own entity. Education, I don't think there's really anything you can combine it with. They could change it a bit. 68 cents of every dollar used to stay in D.C. They could get more money out there if they wanted to retweak it. But I don't know how you come. There's no. What's the word I'm looking for, Rick? There is no similarities as far as agencies of combining those. You know, there's nothing that matches labor and education. It just doesn't match.
Well, we've done away with the word labor. It's now workforce. So they're completely getting rid of that. And, you know, the only thing that I could possibly see that would have some bit of symbiotic relationship, if you will, would be a job training. You know, maybe you could put them together and say that that's education, lifelong learning, that kind of stuff. But everything else, no, I simply don't.
Well, I mean, for example, you could take the EPA and the Department of Interior, and you could combine those two agencies because, you know, one deals with the environment and the other is the land, right? So that has some similarity.
Right.
But labor is an entity within itself.
No, I agree.
And there's nothing that fits with it. And it would not match.
No, I'm right there with you. But, you know, at the end of it, it's all about neutering labor's ability to defend workers' rights in the Department of Labor to do anything. You know, it's those job-killing regulations, Bob, you know.
Right.
Thoughts on killing the post office? Pro, con? You all in favor of privatizing the post office?
You're flashing me back to 1995. But these are the same issues. The post office is a hybrid right now anyway. It's half government, half private right now, in a sense. And, of course, but the post office still had to come to us and you know, for its jurisdiction and the law and everything else. You know, it had to.
No, I mean, and the thing is you know, I keep looking at this, and I've asked the question to some of my rural friends. What are you going to do when the rates double? What are you going to do when the post office says we don't have to deliver to your house anymore? What are you going to do when you can't get anything? You're going to have to drive, you know, into town to go to a post office box that you're going to have to set up to get your mail or to get packages because it's not profitable to show up to your house.
Right. I mean, but we've struggled with this for years.
But, you know, the thing is, there's nothing to struggle about with this, in my opinion, Bob. I mean, the post office does a great job. For what, 50 cents, I think it is now, 51? For like 50 cents, I can send a letter across this entire country. I can send it 3,000 miles. I can send it to Alaska for $50. Really? And
I mean,
somehow...
it's the same old debate about privatizing. I mean, they tried it before. You know, it's a hybrid now, and it's functioning, and I know it's trying to come up with ways to stay in the modern era, but, you know, people will still mail things. They still will.
Of course. How are we going to get our junk mail, man?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to get all that election nonsense?
Right.
That nobody reads.
That's right.
But it's good for industry. It's good for business. It's good to keep the wheels flowing. And, oh, by the way, you know, just to throw it out there so everyone knows, the post office is profitable. They make about $1 billion a year in profits. If it weren't for the 2006 law to mandate that they pay, you know, what is it? I think it's like, you know, 70 years into the future, the pension and the health care of workers that haven't even been born yet, they would be wildly profitable.
Exactly.
Just kind of throwing that out there as a reminder. Mm-hmm. Back to the house. A little dust up today. Meadows and Paul Ryan, you know, maybe a little finger point, a little shouting. What was going on?
Well, Meadows, at the end of the whole deal when he stormed away from the speaker, and he's head of the Freedom Caucus, you know, the conservative caucus, he tried to downplay it, and I guess I just don't have respect when they do this. He tried to downplay it and say that, oh, he was just being passionate. No, he wasn't. He was angry. He said, I've had it. He was standing on the floor in front of everybody yelling at the speaker, and he threatened to do a discharge petition to control the floor of the House on legislation. They've threatened to throw the speaker out. So, you know, that's call it what it is. He was furious. He was angry, and that's because he wanted a vote on the conservative immigration bill, which they hadn't died. But further than that, he wanted Ryan to give him the votes. He wanted Ryan to force people to vote his way.
Yeah. As much as I don't like Paul Ryan, and I don't, you got to wonder if he's got a calendar behind his desk ticking off the days until he's out of there.
Well, sure. I remember the first time he came into the house. I was there. I ran the freshman orientation program, and I can tell you this about Paul Ryan. He is deep within, his wife and kids, and doing things with him. His father passed when he was 16 suddenly, and so he's that type of guy. And I think now he is on the countdown. He just wants to, go back and do something where he remains the vast majority of his time in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I still fear what he ends up doing on the other side, and the person that he's tapped to run in his place, I think, is just as bad. But we'll see how that plays out. And finally, evidently, we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Does anybody not know that already? By the way,
well, I don't think people sometimes realize the amount of discrepancy. I'll take India for example, because I travel there. Hepatitis C, the cure for it, as they call it, is $500, and that same medicine in America is $58,000. $500 in India, $58,000 in India. And on top of it, the second thing is that 1 of 5 Americans will not fill their prescriptions because they can't. They can't afford to fill the prescriptions that they need. But you're right. Everybody should know this by now. And unfortunately, on this news story, it's a blip. You're probably the second person that's brought it up today, and I think it's just so tragic that pharmaceutical companies get away with everything.
No, look, I'm fortunate. Neither my wife or I, we're on any prescription drugs. We have, we go to the doctor and they go, "You're not on something?" I'm going, "No, I'm not. Thank goodness. Let's knock on something." But right. If I were, the costs of, when I talk to people, how much of their income they spend on prescription drugs and how they're hostage to, a healthcare system that just, really is just gouging the life out of them. Something has got to be done about this. And you ask the average American what we should be doing, and we should be moving towards fixing it. But it seems like nobody can ever come to a solution, outside of, the extremes, which are we have socialized medicine or the absolute pay or die free market. And you go, there's got to be somewhere near sanity that we can all get what we need and not end up broke.
Right. Well, I've never even seen one iota of an effort to do anything, with the pharmaceuticals, and then of course the healthcare system itself is, now in a complete train wreck. I don't know. I don't know when it'll change, or I know people can't keep up at all with the healthcare. Period. They can't.
Yeah, I mean, it's tragic, and you've got right now an administration that their sole focus is on just destroying what little help people have in the way of the ACA. Purely because it was the last guy who did it, and for no other reason than that, because at the end of it, this was their plan back in the 90s. It's a whole argument we can get into, but Bob, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Good stuff. Bob Ney, Talk Media News. No, really, the healthcare thing is just maddening to me on so many levels, in that, we could be doing a lot of good stuff. We're spending more money than any country in the world on healthcare, and we're leaving millions of people, tens of millions of people, uninsured. And as he pointed out, 1 in 5 people are going without filling their prescriptions. And you got to ask the question, by not doing that, what problems are you causing down the road that will eventually cost us more in the long run? Again, back to that, penny wise, pound foolish mentality. Just amazing. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people from the top.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show. Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, ricksmithshow.com. So the New York Times reported, I believe it was yesterday, that former mayor of New York, Mike Bloomberg, has approved a plan to pour at least $80 million into the 2018 election, with a bulk of that money going to support Democratic congressional candidates. They go on to say the intervention will bankroll advertising on television, online, and in the mail for Democratic candidates in a dozen or more congressional districts, chiefly in moderate suburban areas where Mr. Trump is unpopular. One of the few billionaires who was saying, look, we got to do something about Trump. But understand, the gun issue is really important to him. He's the main driving guy behind Everytown, which is the gun sanity group who's saying, look, we've got to do something sane and rational on the gun issue. And he's been doing it for a while. Personally, not a huge Bloomberg fan, but at the end of the day, somebody needs to step forward and really, invest in the future of this country. Now, if you think it's going to be a cakewalk, Mike Pence did a fundraiser in D.C. last week. One fundraiser, one rubber chicken dinner, $3.2 million he brought in. So look, the moneyed interests on the right, they're going to spend like crazy to hold on to power. You don't think they're going to let it go easily. And it comes back down to, something my grandfather always said, if a rich guy's going to take a buck out of his pocket to tell you don't need something, you better spend two to get it. And I look at how much money they've invested in this Republican Party and how much power they now have because of it. And hey, we've given them more money. Think of that tax bill. Great return on investment. And good news for TV watchers. And I saw this and I had to chuckle. Evidently, the Conners will be premiering this fall on ABC. It's basically Roseanne without Roseanne. So they've got, and I gotta be with you on here. I'm interested to see how they kill her off. Will they go into the whole ambient racist tweeting? Will that be maybe will she be in rehab? Is that where she goes? What will they do with her? Will it be one of those things where she's just gone, and we don't know where she went? She's just gone, and we just move on. Or maybe better yet, just bring in another Roseanne. Maybe nobody will notice. But evidently they're doing a 10-episode season in the fall. You'll have all the same characters that you don't remember. Dan and Jackie and Darlene and Becky and DJ. I wonder if they're going to keep the black little girl who didn't have much of a speaking role other than in the opening credits she ran through. I wonder how that's all going to play itself out. But there you go. So if you're interested, the Conners will be picked up, and I guess that's a working title. They may change that to the Conners without Roseanne. Who knows? But that's they say they're going to continue to talk about the daily struggles of life in Langford, like they've never done before, and they grapple with parenting, dating, and unexpected pregnancy. I wonder who's going to get unexpectedly pregnant. So, oh boy, the intrigue, the soap opera of the Roseanne. And do you care? I literally don't care about Roseanne. Oh man, where have we fallen? Where have we ended up? And did you ever have one of those days where you just go, can it be this insane? Can we really be this bad? Can the distractions just stop for a day? Can we get a day off? Just one? Just a thought. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Sarah Burris from Raw Story is going to be here to share some thoughts on the news of the day. Quick break. Right back.
Controversial, thought-provoking, opinionated. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. It became known in Pennsylvania labor history as the Day of the Rope. 20 Irish miners were hung for allegedly belonging to a secret group of labor radicals known as the Molly Maguires. The Mollies trace their history back to Ireland in the 1840s. The story goes that an Irish woman by that name stood up to the English landlords. Men fighting for Irish rights would declare themselves Sons of Molly Maguire. To what extent this secret organization actually operated in the United States is debatable. Irish workers who came to the United States often faced harsh discrimination. Many job sites would announce, "Irish need not apply." One place they did find work was in the often dangerous Pennsylvania coal mines in Schuylkill County. Franklin Goins, president of the Reading Railroad, controlled the mines in the 1870s. In late 1874, he announced a wage cut of 20%. The miners went out on strike. During the strike, the Mollies were accused of sabotaging the mines and even murdering mine supervisors. The mine operators quickly blamed any act of violence in the region on the Molly Maguires. Determined to infiltrate the Mollies, Gowen hired the notorious Pinkerton detectives. The Pinkertons sent in Irish-American James McParland under an alias to attempt to join the group. Based on his testimony, 20 miners were hung for murder. They were found guilty even though much of the testimony presented in the case was inconclusive and contradictory. In 1979, the governor of Pennsylvania posthumously pardoned John Blackjack Kehoe, one of the alleged leaders of the Mollies. In 1970, Sean Connery starred in a movie based on the story. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
It's not enough.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, ricksmithshow.com. So you remember this week, first there was the Space Force. We're going to have spacemen. We're going to have a Space Force. It's going to be separate but equal to the Air Force. And then evidently last night in Duluth, we're going to evidently reopen NASA. Yeah, we're going to put people into space. We're going to do that. Just kind of a thought, and the internet had fun with this as well, but I didn't know NASA ever really closed. And as I understand, we actually have people in the International Space Station. Just kind of one of those things where you'd think the president might, I don't know, have a clue. Well, maybe not. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day and, hey, where we can get the high fashion jacket that Melania wore to the southern border. Our good friend Sarah Burris, reporter over at Raw Story. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, spacemen, Sarah, spacemen, reopen NASA, Space Force, laser guns, helmets. It's going to be great. It's going to be tremendous.
I think this is really all a ploy about Trump renaming a planet after himself. And I think it's probably going to be, he's going to rename Uranus to Trump's anus.
See, I got Uranus in stereo. It came from you and from my wife, who said, right there, because I think that's where everyone goes with that. That is the natural progression of thought when talking about Trump.
My favorite joke was somebody who said he's gonna man the first mission and put a man on the sun.
And I hope he's the guy who does it. Look, he's got the orange complexion. It'd be perfect, kind of thing.
They would go so well together.
The thing is this is the thing that gets me. This stuff would be funny if it weren't sad.
I know, right? There are something like 18,000 people who work at NASA. There are people doing amazing climate work to monitor climate change, which it's not like he believes in anyway. We've got the Mars rover still up there taking selfies, being like, yo, I'm here. So, I mean, come on, dude. There's a lot of great, amazing science work going on at NASA. Granted, I do wish we could spend more money, give them more money to do some cool things, like figure out, how to travel to other planets and not just the moon, maybe. I think that'd be cool, but, for now,
don't you, in order to do that, Sarah, don't you have to actually believe in science?
You would think, right? Like, I was thinking maybe one of the things that he would do is make Pluto a planet again, because that goes along with the fact that he doesn't really believe in science. So that would be something nice he could do.
I'm going to make Pluto great again.
Yeah, make Pluto great again.
Can we send him there?
Yeah, right. Like, I'm all about just sending him in outer space. He can be the first president to go into outer space and stay there.
It's just crazy. But hey, nothing surprises me. And again, a nice distraction. But I got to get to the coat. Where do we get the fashion design? Is Ivanka is she going to have some Chinese children make us some coats like this? Because hey, who cares? I don't care. Do you care? Actually, I do. But the coat.
The thing about the coat that really surprises me is that, so she didn't have the coat on whenever she left Air Force One. She only had it on when she was going back up the steps. And that makes me wonder if all of this was staged. And I mean, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe this is my weird conspiracy theory. Melania is subtly trying to undermine her husband's presidency. But I mean, if that is the message, it's spot on, because his White House doesn't care about these kids. And I mean, that was the perfect message to display, because it's true.
No, I mean, it's scary because, the whole idea was she was supposed to go down there to give that kind of mothering view that, she does care, and that she in her tweets said that she cared about all this. And now to do that, part of me, a lot of thoughts were running through my head. Like maybe, Donald wrote it on the back of the coat without her knowing, kind of like punking her or something.
The thing that I thought is, so Melania, if you're into the whole fashion thing and you watch what she actually wears, she wears really, really expensive, classic things. This is not one of those things. This is a jacket that was $39, made from a Mexican designer. And that's what made me think this was all a stage deal, because that's not typical for her. That's not what she wears. She certainly doesn't spend $39 on a coat whenever she's got a self-described billionaire for a husband. She's a fashion model. She doesn't, shop at Target. So I just, that was the thing that just made me be like, this is weird. This is not her typical thing. And again, like, this is the perfect message from the White House, because this is the real God's honest candor that we're finally getting from somebody being like, yeah, no, we don't care. We really don't.
Do you buy that do you buy the Trump tweet that it was about the fake news media? Do you buy any of that?
It's always the fake news media, right? I am fake. I am not really standing here. I am a figment of the internet's imagination.
That's because you're sitting. No, I mean, but do you buy that as that there was some thought put into this and that it was all about the fake news? Or, because I saw it and I'm going, I don't know how you get from there to there. This is just telling me you don't care. You just met with these kids. You went down there for the photo op, and now you're saying, up yours. I don't care.
Yeah. There's no way. Like, she's very particular about what she wears. Whenever they go to various countries, she will wear a designer from that country. Like, she knows what she's doing. So the idea that she just randomly put on a coat just doesn't make sense to me. I don't buy that at all.
So what do you think the message was then? I mean, was this a shot at, I don't even know that this would be a shot at Donald so much. Yeah. I have no idea what the end game of that message is, other than I really don't care.
Oh no. Did I lose you?
No, it's just one of those things that, again, you just kind of look at and it's frustrating. So, I guess we're going to play this game again. I look at this coat and this whole thing, and I go, there's just no way conceivable that it isn't that message. Just nothing at all. There's no way that I can possibly, in any way, shape, or form, come to the conclusion that she cared about any of these kids, and that this was just a plain in your face, snub kind of job. I mean, that's all I can think of. It's just that simple, right, Sarah?
Sorry about that, but yeah, no, I think this is one of those weird things where never before have I seen something so incredibly perfectly illustrate what this White House feels than something as silly as a jacket. Because that's where they're coming from. They don't care. I mean, look at Ivanka Trump's tweets about this. She tweeted one completely ridiculous tweet about with her and her kid when all of this was happening, like a photo of her and her child. And then today she says, now because of the executive order, if only we could, reunite kids with their families. And it's like, dude, you're a senior level staffer in your father's White House. Why don't you spearhead this project? Why don't you take this on and decide, all right, I'm going to be the one who makes sure I'm going to coordinate all of these different agencies and ensure that all of these families get back together because I really care about it. Like, don't just tweet about something. You're in the White House. Do something about it.
No, and Melania too. I mean, just the other day she tweeted out that I think she was meeting with the First Lady of Spain, and they were, I don't know, having tea, on deciding on what they were going to do to help the children. And you go, what?
I know. You have the power. You have the power. I mean, it's like they don't realize. This goes back to the whole thing where they think that Hillary Clinton is still the president. They just don't know what they have the capacity to do. Clearly, they have the capacity to screw stuff up, so maybe they should consider fixing it.
Yeah. Now, it's being reported that Trump's having temper tantrums in the White House because, as I said at the beginning, he truly believed that this was going to, get the culture warriors all bunched up in the panties, and it's backfired on him. Are you hearing the same things?
Yeah, this is one of those interesting kind of miscalculations, I suppose is what you would call it, where it definitely did rile up the base. But when you talk about that middle ground, those people that went for Trump that made the swing vote, those people do not like this story. They don't like seeing these images. They don't like hearing the cries of children, particularly when you talk about suburban women. Those are voters that need to turn out for Republicans in 2018, and I don't know that they will now. I mean, you can look at there's polling about the enthusiasm gap. Republicans are not excited about voting. Democrats are very excited about voting. So, I mean, you talk about independents getting involved in the election. This might be a bad thing for them.
No, and they're the ones who swing the votes. I say this all the time. It comes down to the middle 5% of voters who decide just about every election. And sadly, those 5% are generally the most uninformed voters in the country who sway our elections one way or the other.
Yep, exactly. And when you see, I mean, these images were everywhere. You could not escape this. And so these voters were pummeled with these images and these cries. So
no, and look, there are a number of Democratic candidates and organizations out there who are, who are using that audio of those wailing children. I don't know how you can listen to that and not be moved by it. And we played the video of, I think it was the Future Majority PAC. They put out a video of a little girl singing "America the Beautiful" with all of these images of these kids being locked up in cages and crying and all of this stuff. And it's one of those really just amazingly powerful ads.
Yeah. And I mean, you feel, it's not just that you feel sad and you feel sorry for them. These could be anybody's kids. You look at these faces, this could be anybody's daughter or granddaughter. And I don't know how you cannot have empathy for the people who just want a better life. They just want to escape violence.
Yeah, but these are conservatives. These aren't Bush era compassionate conservatives. The compassion has just been completely drained out of these people. It's all about the politics of winning. And I go back to, the Trump idea that this was going to be just like, those SOB NFL players kneeling. We were going to get those culture warriors all tingly in the panties and all enraged because they were going to keep the families together because of Obama. And it kind of bit him in the behind a little.
Yeah, he's losing people from this, and I'll be interested to see what the polling is from this week. I think we'll probably get it over the weekend or on Monday, because I bet he takes a huge hit.
At least I hope so. I mean, at the end of this, I hope that that sends a message. It just is what it is. Let's move on. Michael Cohen. Did you know he resigned as the deputy finance chairman of the RNC just the other day?
Yeah, I mean,
well, really? It took that long?
And this is the thing that did it. The immigration crisis. His father was an immigrant, so I mean, I guess that is his breaking point. All of the other things, but this was his breaking point, and I'm surprised that it took this long. But if you're Trump's fixer and you try and kneecap people, then maybe that's all he's got.
Or do you think this is a good pivot point to where you now go, no, I was this guy all along, but this was a bridge too far. Now I turn and I pivot. And because there are a lot of people saying, this was kind of a now I'm open to singing kind of statement.
I wondered actually if that's what it was. I wondered if this was an opportunity for him where he just thought, I wanted to run away from this and I wanted to try and build up my own public relations nightmare so that I looked like a compassionate person and build up my profile. So he just used it as this opportunity. Or it could just be, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's honest or not. That's the thing about these people is that if they were not Trump people, you would assume that this was genuine and honest. And these people just end up screwing me up every time. I think, this is well-intentioned, and then it turns out not to be.
Yeah, see, I have a hard time, allowing myself to believe that any of these people have a soul.
I know.
And that any of this would be done in an altruistic kind of manner and not for some skeevy, underhanded, plot to save their own skin.
Yeah, and I think Michael Cohen especially. When you think about him, there's nobody worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. What do you think of this story about the Wall Street Journal with Cohen and the National Enquirer?
I think we knew this was coming. I think this was... What's so crazy is that the National Enquirer guy, Pecker is his name. It's like we're 13-year-old
His
boys.
first name isn't Richard, is it?
No, I wish it was. That'd be great. But so Pecker, we really are like 13-year-old boys. So
I'm sorry.
This dude goes out on media appearances and opens up about the fact that he paid all of these former mistresses of Donald Trump and he did it to keep them quiet because Trump was running. Like, dude, you can't do that. That's not the way that the law works. And he just comes right out with it like, oh yeah, I did this thing. He's my buddy. So I tried to help him out. So I kind of knew that this dude was gonna get subpoenaed. We'll see if Michael Cohen does a plea deal. If he does a plea deal, then you'll probably never see Pecker take the stand. But I know that's a lot of information that he's going to provide about another payment that was given.
All right, so we're going to see the Pecker on the stand. I get it. All right. How do you go through life with it? See, it's no wonder that he got into the National Enquirer.
Yeah, right? With a name like that.
Yeah. It's not even like Schmucker.
Right?
Never mind. I got to move on. I got to get away from this. Help me. Help me get away from this. What did you think of Lewandowski's womp womp thing? I mean, what the heck was that?
What a soulless ass. I mean, what a terrible human being. And the guy who responded to it was a DNC staffer. I mean, his response was spot on. He did exactly what I felt like I would say to him is, how dare you? How absolutely dare you? I mean, it's one thing to not have empathy for brown people. Now you don't have empathy for anybody that's disabled, which I guess matches his boss who made fun of the New York Times reporter. So...
Yeah, but Sarah, here's the thing that gets me, and this is one of those things I've been saying all week on the show. We've, as a society, Republicans have done nothing to stop kids being slaughtered in school on the gun issue. They're literally taking food out of the mouths of children. They're literally taking health insurance away from them. They don't care if, you look at what they're doing with HUD. We're going to kick families out of housing. I mean, you just go down all of the list of the things that we're doing to our own children. What makes anyone think they give a tinker's damn about anyone else's children, especially if they're black or brown or from somewhere else?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is what pro-life really looks like when they talk about, keeping, when they talk about family values. This
Yeah,
is
I've always-
Republican family values.
Yeah, I've always said that the anti-abortion people are the ones who just want all these poor kids to be born so they can watch how miserable their
can
lives are.
torture
Some
them.
kind of fetish of misery porn, if you will.
Yeah. No, I agree. I absolutely agree.
It's twisted. I got to get your thoughts on this head of the Homeland Security, this Christian Nielsen. Should she just give up on Mexican food for a while? Which I got to tell you is tone deaf on so many levels that the night all of this stuff breaks, you're going to a Mexican restaurant.
Right? And she had to like walk out of that place looking at her husband being like, and you wanted Mexican food, thanks.
No, she should have had to run out of there.
Yeah, she should have. I mean, that was humiliating. And I mean, God, seriously, how tone deaf. It seems like she spends the majority of her time these days trying to prove that she should keep her job. She just tries to promote the president as much as possible, do whatever he wants, and try and out disgusting him. And this is who we have. And I don't know if you also saw this week that she decided that she doesn't believe that the Russians are trying to hack the 2018 election. So it's like, you're the person who's in charge of Homeland Security and you don't believe in the Russians continuing to attack us when all of the intelligence agencies are saying this? Great. Yeah. I feel safe. Thanks.
No, I feel no safety whatsoever. But again, I look at this woman and I go, why you haven't resigned is beyond me. And just looking at that makes me go, you're a soulless. Where's Samantha Bee when I need her? Right. You're just soulless.
Yeah. But hey, look at Scott Pruitt. There's another one. I mean, these people, and Betsy DeVos, they are all just wretched people. And of course, nobody's going to resign because the other person is just as bad or worse.
It's amazing. And finally, the other story I found very interesting, a statement by one of Obama's ex-advisors. While Trump's running around saying the elites are out to get him, I thought this guy's comment was spot on. Basically, Trump's got a golden toilet. Talk to me about somebody who's elite.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, Trump gets up there in Minnesota and he tells all of these people in Duluth, oh, these elites, I don't know why they think they're so elite. I have more money. I'm the president. I have a bigger apartment. Like, he basically just proved that he was more elite than the elites. And then Dan Pfeiffer from the Obama administration gets up there and it's like, dude, I got news for you. You have a gold toilet. You are a member of the elite. Surprise.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I bet he's got a $16,000 shower curtain like that Kozlowski guy from Tyco, or what was it, a $7,000 or $8,000 umbrella stand.
Yeah. I mean, come on, dude.
It's crazy. But did you see some of the video footage that, some of the news coverage out of that rally, especially the one woman who was just breaking down in tears about he tries so hard and everyone's against him. He's ripping children away from their parents. And you're okay with that.
But that's exactly what he tries to do, is he tries to seem like he is the victim. That's part of this sociopathy about him, is he's always the victim. It's always, somebody's coming after him and you need to save him and protect him. And that's how his supporters connect with him. They sort of see themselves as, he's misunderstood just like I'm misunderstood. And so I have to, get involved and try and protect this person. And it's like, no, he really is a horrible person.
Horrible person all the way around, and hopefully come November, a loud message sent. Sarah, I appreciate the thoughts, the time, the work. Good stuff.
Thank you.
As always, our good friend Sarah Burris, reporter over at Raw Story. Make sure you check out her work. They're incredible stuff. They also do good stuff on other topics as well. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Exposing that free trade is never free. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2 on On this day in labor history, the year was 1943. That was the day United Mine Workers President John L. Lewis issued strike orders at the nation's mines, calling out more than 500,000 miners. The third general coal strike in 3 months defied the wartime no-strike pledge. Miners raised several demands, including wage increases, an end to the dangerous third shift, and portal-to-portal pay. High wartime inflation only worsened miners' already low wages. Early that spring, Lewis denounced the mine owners, the War Labor Board, and the Little Steel formula used to calculate wartime wages. He warned the formula meant starvation for workers and the end of collective bargaining. By April, President Roosevelt had ordered wage freezes. Miners began walking out of the pits even before the strike call, as soon as the War Labor Board handed down their decision on June 19th. The board had rejected all of the miners' demands. The United Mine Workers responded stating, quote, "No member and no officer of the United Mine Workers of America would be so destitute of principle and so devoid of honor as to sign or execute such an infamous yellow dog contract." Though the United Mine Workers were forced to call off the strike the next day, some miners continued to stay out in protest. 4 days later, Congress passed the dreaded Smith-Conley Act, dubbed the Slave Labor Bill, in response to the strike. Throughout the summer, miners across the country would rage against the government for threatening them with conscription and jail time if they dared refuse the terms of the decision. By November, the miners would walk out a fourth time and finally win many of their demands, at least from the War Labor Board. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2. So today, again, the president decided it'd be a good idea. Hey, as a nice distraction, let's talk about shrinking the size of government and putting together the Labor Department and the Department of Education. And, oh, by the way, while we're at it, let's privatize the post office. Let's do all that stuff. And we've been having this debate between privatizing or things remaining in the hands of we the people for a very long time. In fact, it's one of the core issues that I started this program on, going to be 13 years now. Our big anniversary, coming up here in Labor Day. This is one of the core issues that I started the program on. And in those 13 years, I've asked, repeatedly, tell me something that we've privatized. Tell me something that we used to do for ourselves, that we've handed over to the for-profit, corporate interests, that has actually been better for us, that met all of the criteria that we were told, that it would be be better, it'd be cheaper, more efficient, a better service, and it would this grand utopia. Show me something. And in all these years, no one has been able to prove their allegations. Now, here in Pennsylvania, someone one time threw out, well, we deregulated the energy market. I go, well, that's different than privatizing it. We simply took off any controls that we had, and prices went up, service went down, and now it's just kind of this mess. Service isn't better, prices aren't cheaper, and guess what? It's now more decentralized and chaotic than ever before. I've had people say, well, the prison industry, yeah, we privatized that. And I can only snicker at that and go, really? You think that what's going on now is better? You see all of these reports of the prisoners being fed food that's rotten or infested with bugs or ants or cockroaches, and somehow that's better. I've yet to have someone say, this is great. And the post office is one of those things. Once you privatize it, understand the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to stop home deliveries. Unless you're in a high density area, they're going to stop that. Currently, under the law, they have to deliver to every address in this country, regardless of how difficult it is to get to, which is why UPS and FedEx and other places give the post office a lot of their packages to deliver in the last mile because they're going there anyway, especially those out of the way places. So, people in rural communities, these free riders, these parasites who are just living off the rest of us, who are paying the freight, they get their mail because the rest of us fund it. And I don't know anybody who goes, no, they shouldn't get any mail. So when I look at this, I fear that, we've become so apathetic and so ingrained in thinking that, privatization, yes, it's good. We're going to end up losing a valuable asset, and that is the post office. And as Bob Ney said earlier, it's this quasi kind of government controlled, kind of private control environment where the government sets the rates and routes and what they can do. To me, you loosen some of those restrictions, keep the core, control, but maybe allow them to do postal banking, allow them to do more package stuff, allow them to get into other kinds of products instead of having the kind of control. Because hey, what they're doing is they're protecting other industries by not allowing it. And sadly, what would end up happening is we would privatize it. It would be sold off to the cheapest bidder, and it would be the largest land grab at least in my lifetime. I'm not going to say it would be the largest land grab in history because, the United States was an entire land grab. It was stolen from the Indians. But it'd be right up there. So I'm curious your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what's going on in Puerto Rico, what's going on with the education system there and the attacks on teachers and students and all of that. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
And I'll go to work at night. I got no time for living, yes, I'm working all the time. It seems to me I could live my life a lot better than I think I am. I guess that's why they call me the working man.
Making the blue blood see red. The Rick Smith Show.
They called it a public relations nightmare if released.
Blocked water study finally released reveals widespread chemical contamination.
Most of the food crops that we consume showed these nutrient reduction.
Increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere reduces the nutritional value of food. Plus,
the Earth is warmer in 1988 than at any time in the history of instrumental measurements.
It's been 30 years since Dr. James Hansen first warned Congress about climate change.
30 years and counting. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Scott Pruitt is trying to protect you from finding out water is bad. If it is, which it's not, because what study?
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, they've been hiding this study for a long, long time for some reason, and then they decided this week, with everything that's going on in the country, would be the week they release it, I guess.
Yeah, that widespread water contamination study had been blocked from public release by the Trump administration out of fear that it would cause, quote, a public relations nightmare. And for good reason. The Centers for Disease Control quietly published that study online on Wednesday, and it is not good. As predicted, the study shows dangerous toxic chemicals known as PFOA and PFAS used in nonstick pans and other consumer products are widespread in public water systems and military bases around the country. And the study found those chemicals are far more harmful at far lower levels than previously thought. The study recommends that the Environmental Protection Agency set the safe threshold for these chemicals up to 10 times lower than they are currently.
So when they were originally blocking this report, they said it would be a public relations nightmare, but they're releasing it on one of the craziest, busiest news weeks, and that's saying quite a bit, that we've seen in a long time. So will anybody actually notice this study?
Probably not. And it's also highly unlikely that any action will be taken by the Trump EPA to address any toxic chemicals in the U.S. water supply.
Well, that part goes without saying.
Well, this week, the EPA faced a court-ordered deadline to propose new standards for chemical spills from industrial facilities. That was in the wake of a toxic coal ash spill into a West Virginia river back in 2014. The EPA on Wednesday published that regulatory proposal to regulate those chemicals and concluded that no new rules are needed.
Of course they did.
And President Trump this week rescinded President Obama's protections for the oceans and the Great Lakes that were put in place in the wake of the catastrophic 2010 BP oil disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. Trump's new executive order instead orders offshore oil and gas drilling to be prioritized and calls for more industrial development in and around the oceans and the Great Lakes.
He's calling for more industrial development around these precious resources.
Indeed, he is.
Okay.
Meanwhile, a disturbing first-of-its-kind study has troubling long-term implications for the global food supply. Published in the journal Nature, it finds that rising carbon dioxide emissions appear to reduce the nutritional value of food crops. More CO2 does make plants grow bigger, but it turns out that too much CO2 is like junk food for plants, increasing production of simple carbohydrates at the expense of essential nutrients like protein, zinc, iron, and vitamins in staple food crops like rice, corn, and wheat, which are primary food sources for billions of people around the world.
So those global warming deniers who said that, well, even if the globe is warming, this will be good because we'll grow more food, plants need carbon dioxide. Even if they are right about that aspect, they are wrong that somehow this makes everything better.
That's correct. Finally, June 23rd marks the 30th anniversary of the day that NASA scientist Dr. James Hansen first testified to Congress that rising CO2 emissions from the burning of fossil fuels was triggering dangerous global warming. Here's Dr. Hansen's original testimony back in 1988.
Our computer climate simulations indicate that the greenhouse effect is already large enough to begin to affect the probability of extreme events such as summer heat waves. Altogether, this evidence represents a very strong case, in my opinion, that the greenhouse effect has been detected and it is changing our climate now.
30 years and millions of dollars in fossil fuel industry-funded denial propaganda later, all of Hansen's predictions in 1988 have proven roughly accurate. In an interview with AP this week, Dr. Hansen said that he wishes he had been wrong. While some actions have been taken and the transition to renewable energy is gaining momentum globally, 30 years later, global warming's impacts are no longer in the future, they are now.
For much more on all of those reports and the ones we couldn't get to, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Don't forget you can download our reports anytime via Stitcher, TuneIn, or iTunes. Find us, follow us, and share us worldwide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
The more you ignore me, the closer I get. You're wasting your time. The more you ignore me.
Yes, it is all about the children, even after they're born. Rick Smith.
Silent teacher, hold my hand. Lead me to the promised land like gold.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, ricksmithshow.com. So kind of change the message a little bit. I mean, look, what's going on the southern border is absolutely horrible. It's soulless. It's cruel. It's expected from this administration, to be honest. And you need to do nothing more than look at what's going on in Puerto Rico since Hurricane Maria. And it's one of those things that I've been saying all week, not surprised. Look what we've done to our own kids. Why would we be surprised that we would harm others? And here to share some thoughts about what's going on there on the island, what's going on with the kids there. Are they, what education looks like, and the attacks on all of that. I've asked one of our badass teachers' friends to come talk with us. Yarsara Ramos is living in Texas, mother licensed Spanish teacher, master's degree, all of that, highly educated, good teacher. Yarissa, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you for having us. We're thankful and honored that you give us a little bit of time to shed some light on Puerto Rico and what's been going on over there.
So, I mean, you're down in Texas right now. Start off, what's going on your southern border is despicable. It's cruel, but I got to be honest, not surprising given what we've seen happen in Puerto Rico, or what hasn't happened in Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm. Well, it really isn't surprising for minorities. It's not something that is it's alarming. It's horrible. It's cruel. Whenever I go to put my babies to sleep, I cry thinking of the parents that aren't being able to do it right now. But it is with the history of what the United States has done. And Puerto Rico is no exception. Just to give a little bit of background, Puerto Rico has been a territory of the United States since 1898. Before that, we were under Spanish rule for 405 years, having developed history, national identity, all of that. And then the Hispanic American War happened. Military government came into the island, and then the United States gave or allowed a civil government to take place in 1900. And then the famous Jones Act that has gained notoriety now since Hurricane Maria. Everybody all of a sudden found out of the Jones Act. That was very surreal, by the way, when I'm watching the news coverage from here. All my family is over there, so the information I had was really what was coming in through the media, and seeing people find out about the Jones Act was a very surreal kind of experience, because I had never seen Puerto Rico being spoken about in my lifetime. I'm only 38 years old, but I've never actually seen so many people actually learn about the island.
Right.
And then basically from 1898 to 1948, we weren't even allowed to elect our own governor. That includes education in that regard. Everything that had to do with daily life was under United States control, although we did have some elected representatives within the island. Our first real elections of our Puerto Rican elected governor was in 1948, and then we got a constitution in 1952. One of the benefits that the United States did bring was education. It mimicked the system of education in the United States into Puerto Rico. However, it had to do with the imposition of English, which did not really bode very well because of that national identity. And so that didn't really work out all that great. And I'm guessing that had something to do with the need or want of the United States to assimilate Puerto Ricans into an American way of life,
right,
to see if they could be a state. But the resistance was just very, very, very strong.
And as I understand,
go ahead.
In the interim, as I understand, the vote for statehood has happened several times, and the last one I understand, went towards making Puerto Rico a state, right?
It's I just actually saw a clip with our current governor that yes, Puerto Ricans have voted twice for statehood, but it's always been in the hands of the Congress. I mean, Puerto Rico was under total U.S. control for about 50 years, never making a move to make us a state. And so that's one of the sort of myths that a lot of people think, that Puerto Ricans actually have the control in that regard. We really don't. It is really all in the hands of Congress, and there's absolutely no law that Puerto Rico can pass that cannot be under U.S. Constitution. That's why we are indeed, by any definition, a colony of the United States.
Right.
And what's happening right now with Hurricane Maria, it's new in the sense that it's the first time that we've had such a devastating natural disaster. I think the worst hurricane before that was maybe I wasn't even thinking of being born. And so that is new for us. It was completely devastating. I didn't hear about the whereabouts of my in-laws for about 2 weeks. Wow. That is something that I never had happened. My own parents didn't have power for a good 4 months. I have friends that still don't have power. So that is new. However, whenever, like, we can go back to World War I, World War II, every time that something extraordinary has happened, it has been a cycle of exodus or migration, and then United States interests come into the island. They make a profit and then they leave. It has been that's just a cycle that continues to happen. And even with the migration of the Puerto Ricans into the United States, most Puerto Ricans are highly educated. That is something that we kind of pride ourselves about. When I myself was graduating high school, here kids get asked, are you going to the military? Are you going to the workforce? Or are you going to college? There's options. For me, the question is, what university are you going to? And my generation was the same way. And so it has always happens whenever there's a big migration, the United States has benefited from a highly educated people and workforce, and then we benefit the United States as well, right. Inland, in the mainland, and on the island.
The disaster capitalism, disaster capitalism, hard at work.
Exactly. And there really isn't much that we can do because of that Jones Act. We can't. It's not like we can decide to all of a sudden go and trade with whomever we please or change our economic system or anything like that. We're kind of zeroed in to what we can do financially speaking. And then now with Maria, privatization of the education system is not new. I remember when I was in middle school in 93, 94, both my parents are teachers. And so I remember marching at a strike because there were rumors of what was going to happen. People wanted to privatize schools. They wanted to create something similar to what we have independent districts here in the United States. Right. They wanted to do something like that. And Puerto Ricans, historically, we do not take well the idea of privatizing public services. Good. But right now, given Maria, in the devastation, I think it just proved fertile ground for
kind of like what they did in New Orleans after Katrina. Mm-hmm. Good crisis, good opportunity. Sweep in, grab up all the things that we want, and make the profit and head out the door.
Exactly, and that creates a big problem. I mean, to bring in, first of all, from what I've been able to keep up, the Secretary of Education there, she's not she came from the outside and doesn't quite grasp how the system was. And I get the sense, I have a taste of colonialism in my mouth whenever I hear her talk, because it's like we want to make it, she wants to make it like the United States. That's never really worked out that well in history. In these 120 years, it just hasn't worked out that well, because the national identity won't allow people to say, yeah, we're going to be like somebody else. We can't. We're Puerto Rican.
So do you think that using that frame, because I've heard people who are like, because I've asked, why haven't we done anything there? And you go, well, that's their problem. They're Puerto Ricans. And you go, no, there's still a U.S. territory. They're still attached to the U.S. So how do you, when you're talking to somebody, how do you balance that, where you go, they're in great need. They're part of our country. We need to take care of them and help them and do all of that. How do you balance that?
Well, the main concern with that argument is that Puerto Rico didn't ask to be a U.S. territory. It was through invasion. It was through imposition. And so, and because of, let me see, I would have to go back to our crops being completely taken over. Our major crops were coffee and tobacco, and all of a sudden the United States needed sugar. All that got taken out. And then everything that has happened in terms of the economy in Puerto Rico, which is where the biggest problem lies, is because the profits of all these businesses that have come into the island, under the pretense of creating jobs.
Right. As it always is.
I mean, in the 30s, as it always is, 30s, 40s, 50s, Operation Bootstrap. There's actually a really good documentary on YouTube. You can just find it, Operation Bootstrap, that details how these companies, the refined oil refineries, Phillips, all these manufacturers came in promising 100,000 jobs when they only created 300 or 1,800 jobs. But the Puerto Rican government invested about $1 billion.
Yeah, but that's not only Puerto Rico. That's every state in the country. We can point to every state who's done that. So let me ask you last line of questioning, because I'm kind of running out of time. As fascinating as I am with this topic, where do you want things to go? If in your estimation, where do the people want to go? Do they want to break away, be their own island? How do you see things moving forward? How would you want to see things move forward?
As divided as the United States is right now, Puerto Rico is going to be the same, because there are different ways that people see of solving the problems. However, closing down schools right now, they're planning on closing down 265 schools. Right now, there's on June 12th, the AP reported that a judge halted those closures because there's so many of those that the government hasn't been able to prove that they're necessary. School closures and charter takeover, definitely not the way to go. We believe in Badass Teachers Association, we're fierce defenders of public education, and we cannot have interest that comes from the outside of the island to profit from our kids. And knowing that really research shows that charter schools aren't really any better than than public schools.
No,
And
I'm
our
right there with
teachers
you.
are Puerto Rican.
No, we
Our
see
Puerto
that, not
Rican
just in Puerto
teachers
Rico.
and our Puerto Rican teachers are excellent. I mean, what Puerto Rican teachers do with students, with what they have, is nothing short of amazing. We have great students, we have great teachers, and privatization is just not the way to go.
I'm with you, Urissa. I appreciate the time.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much. I'd love to talk to you again about this. This is one of those fascinating topics that I don't get enough of. Appreciate the time.
Absolutely, you can go on and on for hours. Thank you so much, Rick. Have a beautiful evening.
You as well. Thanks so much. Again, it's one of these things that the privatization, scheme everywhere you look, and Puerto Rico's not alone in this. They're really not. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you think. Quick break. Right back.
Can you tell me which way to go so I can bury you with all of my might?
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. That was the day that 10 Irish miners were hung in Pennsylvania. They were part of a group of 20 who had been sentenced to death for allegedly being part of the Molly Maguires, a group of alleged radical Irish miners. Miners were on strike in the Schuylkill County anthracite coal region. The Mollies were accused of perpetrating violence and murder against the mine owners. Newspapers helped to rile up anger against the striking Irish miners. A Pinkerton detective infiltrated the group, and his testimony doomed those he accused to the gallows. Since the hangings, many have questioned his testimony and the cases made against the miners. But at the time, many newspapers celebrated the hangings. On the day of the executions, the New York Tribune called the men, quote, the wild beasts of the collieries of eastern Pennsylvania. The Carbon Advocate of Lehighton, Pennsylvania, declared the majesty of the law has been vindicated. The community breathes more freely now that these men who feared neither the laws of God or man have met their doom. The day has gone down in labor history as the Day of the Rope, or Black Thursday. The message of the hanging was meant to be sent to all who would dare stand up against the mine owners. In 1979, the governor of Pennsylvania posthumously pardoned John Blackjack Kehoe, one of the alleged leaders of the Mollies.
Down the mines, no sunlight shines, those pits, they're black as hell. In mud and slime, they do their time at Paddy's prison cell. And they curse the day they try.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm going to this battle, take my Union gun. Gonna end this world of slavery, for this war is one you're bound to lose. Are you fascists or bound?
Well, there you have it. Privatization wherever you look. And I'll tell you, the privatization of the post office is a bad idea, and it's a topic we're going to be talking about over the next several days. Because at the end of it, if they're able to steal that asset from us, as they've done with prisons and parking, I mean, you want to look at some of the biggest scams in the entire country. Look at the parking deals that have gone on, where if you want to have a parade in your city, you've got to pay the parking authority, the private parking company, 24 hours in advance. So 24 hours overnight before the parade, you have got to pay full rates, as if the lots were full or if the streets were full. Just a complete and total ripoff. But hey, a sweetheart deal if you can get one. And this is what we've done in trying to cut taxes for the very wealthy and still fund programs for we the people. We've sold off our assets. Water and sewer, the same thing. Just amazing stuff. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anything that you could think of we've privatized that actually worked out in our favor, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
It's coming from the wind. You
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email rick@thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Its color like tides flood beneath the lunar sway, imperial, mysterious, in amorous array. Democracy is coming to the USA.